You're watching News 4 at 4.
Almost 100 juveniles have been shot so far this year in the nation's capital. And that spike in violence has some parents considering drastic measures to keep their kids safe.
All this week, the News 4 Iteam is looking into the impact of gun violence on young people and their families. Today, consumer investigative reporter Susan Hogan spoke with families about the challenges that prevent them from making moves they think would keep them safe. Susan?
Well, imagine loving your neighbors, your church, your community, but you're so worried every time your kids leave the house because of violence. I recently sat down with two moms who want to uproot their families because of the increase they've seen in youth crime. But that option brings its own big challenges.
We selected Marshall Heights because of a number of different reasons.
Go, get it.
First, we wanted somewhere where our children would have access to green space. We also wanted a place that was relatively safe. What we're seeing now is just a community that is deteriorating from its core.
Delia Housel's security cameras captured this gunfight outside of her home in Southeast D.C. last summer. Her husband and 3 children sheltered inside as shooters fired at each other through the family's front yard.
You can see the bullet, the fire from the bullet from the gun.
Was that the last straw?
That was the last straw for us.
While overall gun crimes are up citywide, Delia says she and her husband want to leave their home in Ward 7, where data shows gun violence and homicides have steadily risen since they moved in 6 years ago.
One option that we are really considering is whether or not we should move out to Maryland or Virginia.
It's a move she doesn't take lightly, especially as she serves on her advisory neighborhood commission. But escaping the gunfire and random acts of violence isn't that simple for Delia or many of her neighbors. Though she owns her home and could sell, the average rate on a 30-year mortgage is hovering near 8%.
So it would completely leave us house poor.
Delia and her husband count themselves lucky, however, because they do have the means to move. But the I-Team is hearing from other families in the district who say they're held back by a different set of obstacles, especially those in D.C.'s public housing.
And I just want them to feel safe doing the smallest things, you know, taking the trash out, getting the groceries out the car. It's rough because you don't know when to duck and dodge from bullets.
News 4 first interviewed Ebony back in 2019 after an unimaginable pattern of events.
He was shot with an AK-47.
Her 2 sons, then only 12 and 13 years old, were both shot within months of each other near Kenilworth Avenue in Northeast. They both survived, but her 13-year-old, Roy Nall, was paralyzed from the waist down. Right after the shootings, Ebony told a News 4 reporter she pleaded with the D.C. Housing Authority to relocate her family. Watching the news report today, she says not much has changed.
Everybody can't afford to buy houses and live in a nice area.
And during that interview, you had said, I just want to move. I want to move to a safe place.
And I still do.
Ebony says D.C. Housing Authority did eventually relocate her family, but she says her new neighborhood in Lincoln Heights isn't any safer, and it's not wheelchair accessible for her now 17-year-old son, who struggles just to get up and down the stairs.
Now that I need a bigger unit that is handicap accessible, they're claiming they don't have that.
Ebony says she's doing all she can to make a move, but feels her options are limited. She said she can't afford market rate rent while also paying utilities and other bills families face. She applied for federal relief through the Housing Choice Voucher Program, formerly called Section 8, which could allow her to rent anywhere in the city. But she says she's been on that list for nearly 20 years. Currently, she is applying to D.C.'s Home Purchase Assistance Program and hoping it doesn't run out of money like it did in the last fiscal year.
I'm stuck here in D.C. trying to, make an honest living to provide for my children.
The D.C. Housing Authority's waitlist to access housing vouchers and public housing have been closed since 2013, and there's no scheduled time to reopen it. We wanted to ask the Housing Authority about the waitlist and some of the challenges it's up against when trying to move families out of public housing they don't feel safe in. They sent out their police chief, who couldn't talk to those larger issues, but offered this.
Residents are very concerned, especially if you were a victim of crime, then certainly you feel you're in crisis.
Yashim Sayan with the DC Policy Center, a nonprofit think tank, says right now there's just not enough affordable housing.
We've put a lot of money in housing, but government subsidies will never be enough to meet all the needs.
Yashim says the problem with those investments is where they're going.
It's cheaper to build these units in less resourced parts of towns,
creating what she calls economic segregation. We asked the chief about that, and he says the city is trying to do more mixed development and hopes the mayor's programs may help. Even though Delia's family hasn't found a new home to move to, they've begun packing up. It's not what they want to do. They love their community and would prefer to stay.
Let's go. Let's see what you have. You have to put your family safety first. And again, we're hoping that there are, with some of the new initiatives coming down the pike, that the communities will begin to be safer. It's just a matter of time. Right?
Can you wait for that long?
Exactly. That's the question.
Again, Delia says moving is a last resort. She and her husband are also working to bring their neighbors together, just recently creating a nonprofit called All City Community Solutions. Their hope is this will foster social cohesion and empower residents to get involved and look out for each other, something she says she feels some of these communities really lack these days.
I mean, just hearing their stories, I mean, everybody deserves to live in a community that they love and also feel safe in. So what should people do who are in this situation, especially people who live in public housing?
Right. Great question. So there are a number of nonprofit groups out there for those who are experiencing housing challenges. So we've made it very easy for you. We've compiled a list for you along with links so you can easily navigate all of this. You just have to go to NBCWashington.com/investigations. And of course, not every family wants to leave these communities. Mostly they just want them to be safe for their families, especially their children as well. So tomorrow, my colleague Tracy Wilkins sits down with some of DC's children to talk about gun violence and how it impacts them. So Tracy is joining us with that part of her story.
Yeah, Susan, we sat down for a roundtable discussion with teens from neighborhoods dealing with gun violence every day.
On holidays like 4th of July and New Year's, when those bullets start ringing, I have to either hide in my hallway or in the bathroom because those are the only two places in the house I know where I won't be hit.
Much more of that discussion coming up. This is just one way this young woman says she has to protect herself. But there's so much more these teens had to say about the toll of gun violence in their communities and how it's impacting them and what they want done about it.
Yeah. And that toll lasts with them, no doubt, for the rest of their lives. It's almost like getting PTSD at that age.
Right.
Absolutely. Wait till you hear what these kids had to say about that because they discussed that specifically.
Yeah, and all of this is coming up tomorrow as we continue our week-long series on gun violence, A Call to Action.
As a parent, your heart just aches for every single person involved.
It does. Absolutely. But I mean, you know, we're all parents, and you think about this. You want your kids, you want your families to be safe, no matter where you are.
And that's what this series is about. It's not just looking for solutions, but also hoping that some change is going to come out of this.
Absolutely.
Hope so.
All right.
Susan, Tracy, thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.
Tomorrow, it's a time-honored tradition.